You are very welcome to the change room. I am delighted to say that joining us to review the weekend's action is a man who knows a thing or two about winning medals, Gary Rogers. Gary, how are you?
I'm very good, thanks, Ryan.
Good. You were on full duty at the weekend at a couple of games.
Yeah, no, I was at the Rovers and Dundalk game, or should I say Shams and Dundalk game?
Yeah,
I was at that game, and then I went to Drogheda and Finn Harps as well on the Saturday. So I took in a couple of games over the weekend and caught up on the action on Watch LOI.
Good stuff. I suppose maybe if we start the game that you covered on Network 2 Friday night, Shamrock Rovers and Dundalk. A difficult start for your former team. A good game though, but Shamrock Rovers taking all 3 points.
Yeah, it was a good game. When you look back through, I say the highlights, the second half obviously was better than the first half. Dundalk really didn't create a whole lot in the first half. I went in 1-0 down, thanks to Danny Mandrea's goal, quick free kick, good strike from him, but probably not the best goalkeeper, but they put them 1-0 up. But there was plenty of action in the second half, and there could have been a penalty early in the second half where Dan Cleary, I can't remember who he caught. I think it was Green. I think he caught. So there was plenty of goal mouth action. Alamanis had a good game in goals, and the Shamrock Rovers kind of looked comfortable at 2-0, and Pat Hoban had a couple of chances and got a late goal. But it was certainly an entertaining game. It's so early in the season, probably not the same standard as the game last year where it was 3-2, but all in all, I think it was pretty good viewing.
Yeah, it was very much a tale of two keepers. So you had the bird's eye view from the sideline. Just with Shamrock Rovers, obviously, there's been a lot made of the players they've lost in terms of Jack Byrne and Aaron McInnet. Have you seen enough of them now in the first few games to say that they can cope with those losses and that they're going to be as strong going forward this year?
Yeah, I think they can cope with them. There's no doubt about that. Shamrock Rovers are going to have the majority possession in most games they play. And you look at Chris McCann has come into it, and he looks a really good player. And look, you've Burke and Green and Gaffney and Mandreo and like I said, they've got really good players. And you've Ronan Finn in the middle of the park as well. So they've got good options. Whether they're quite as good in that midfield unit as they were last year with Aaron McInniff and Jack Byrne, that remains to be seen. But you also have to remember they've got Richie Tell coming in the summer, and he will be a serious addition to their squad. So, look, they're certainly firm favourites to win the league, but it will be interesting to see how they get on in against Rovers this weekend in Sligo. So it'll be, that'd be a really good game, really good test for them, because obviously Sligo Rovers going really well. Probably won at the weekend ugly, if you like. Wasn't probably their best performance, but good teams win when they're not at their best. And all in all, it's been a really good start for Sligo Rovers, and they'll be welcoming Shamrock Rovers down to showgrounds, and really looking forward to that game.
What can you put it down to Sligo Rovers' positive start? Because obviously last year going into the lockdown we had no points, whereas this year they seem to come absolutely flying out of the traps. What do you think has been the difference?
I think you're probably reaping the rewards of having a consistent manager in place and a consistent team, if you like. They've put out the same back five for all the games so far. They're solid in midfield. Pretty much what Sligo's 11 is going to be. Obviously, there's one or two positions that might rotate a little bit. Obviously, Liam knows what he wants to do, and everyone is kind of well coached and well drilled at this stage, and they know what the manager expects from them. And that continuity that Sligo would have built up last year from after the break onwards, where they were really probably the form team outside of Shamrock Rovers in the second half of the season, or whenever it was slightly more than a half, but after the break, so they've really built on that and maintained it. And everything is going really well for them, and this is going to be a real test. 3 or 4 games into the season now, and it's a good indication to how they're going when they play Shamrock Rovers in the showgrounds.
Yeah, the only shame is that the showgrounds won't be jam packed on Saturday night. You know what it's like to play in those games in a full showgrounds, and it really is something special. But in terms of Longford Town, Gary, they've also had a decent start, and nobody's going to want to visit them in Longford this year.
Yeah, look, they have. And look, I was at the Bows Longford game when they were 2-0 down and looked dead and buried. Really, at half time, it could have been 3 or 4. Lee Stacey made a couple of really good saves in the first half, which kind of gave Longford a chance coming out in the second half. And, they've showed great spirit. which is always going to be important, to go and get 2 goals away from home in Bohemians. and pull a draw out of the bag, it goes to show, that the sort of group that they have and the characters that they have, and they will need that. It's a long season, and they will need that team spirit. When they're going to have a patch where it's going to be a little bit sticky for them at some stage, and that team spirit will hopefully help them through.
Yeah, and just actually before we move on to the next game, just going back to the Shamrock Rovers and the Dundalk game, Gary, because I am interested to get your opinion on it, being a former legend down in Dundalk. They have brought in a couple of players, obviously not household names. They are quality players. Are they going to gel, and is it going to take maybe the shape that Dundalk would usually take now as the season goes on, or is there just a feeling that they are slipping behind the pack?
I think they've brought in lots of players, and I suppose that the word is that there's more players on the way, up to 3 or 4 new players coming in. And the strategy and the thinking behind that would be a worry for me if you're bringing in 3 or 4 players this late in the day, given that they didn't particularly have a good pre-season when they only had 2 games, if you don't include the President's Cup game. So it is worrying, and I think, although there is lots of quality there, you still need to have that kind of, team morale and team spirit, and that togetherness and familiarity of playing with guys in positions. You look at Dundalk starting the season so far, they haven't had a settled 11, and that continuity between all the players in their positions is just not there now, and you would worry that it would take too long, to build that in order to put forward a really good title challenge. And at the minute, I suppose before the game against Bohemians on Friday, it's worrying, going into your 4th game of the season with no win in the bag for, that group and that club, the way it's structured and the investment that's there. It certainly is worrying times.
Is there a slight feeling down there that maybe they're signing players to progress in the European competition, given that they've had such success in the league the last couple of years? Is there more of an emphasis now on performing in Europe rather than the league?
Well, look, Europe has always been a real big focus for the club and success in Europe. But in order to do that, you've got to get to Europe. I'm just about got to Europe there this year, so you can't neglect your league, and really focus on Europe, because if Dundalk don't get it right this year on the pitch, they won't be in Europe next year. So that focus goes out the window. So I don't think it's right to focus on Europe when it could only be 1 or 2 games in your season. You've really got to focus on the league and winning cups or whatever it is, but certainly the league, in order to get to them European competitions.
And we've seen at the Dundalk, and again at the likes of maybe St. Pat's this year, there seems to be a lot going around the club with who's in charge of the team and such situations, given Filippo and Shane at Dundalk. You obviously been a senior pro in that dressing room. Would it have been a distraction for you back in the day, Gary, or as long as the players know where they stand, is it a pretty straightforward situation, or can it be distracting?
Yeah, look, it certainly can be distracting. I think last year, we were under no illusions that Filippo was the manager, and that was it. And Shane is on record as saying that and off the ball and all the rest, and there was no issues there. Filippo was the man in charge. He was the man who picked the team. Now this year, you have the situation where a week before the start of the season, the club hold a press conference for whatever reason, I don't know, to tell everybody that Shane is the manager. And then, it's contradictory reports as to where the buck stops. Like, if things don't go well, who's going to be the man that pays the price with his job? Like, we don't know. So is it Shane? Is it Filippo? It's not good for either guy, either Shane or Filippo, to be kind of unsure as to their position themselves. And then it's certainly it's not very, I suppose, stable for the whole dressing room environment either, when you're not, like, there's contradictory reports. Maybe they do know inside who is the manager, but from the outside looking in, it's a bit messy.
I'm sure time will tell as the games go on. Another game you were on duty at the weekend was Finn Harps and Drogheda, if I'm correct. A decent point for both teams. Maybe Finn Harps would be disappointed given the run they're on, but how was the game, Gary?
Yeah, the first half was probably poor enough, to be honest with you. There wasn't really many chances in it. But the second half really came into life. Carl Sullivan with a brilliant strike from the edge of the box. Drogheda would have been disappointed. They dealt with the Finn Harp set plays really well up until that point, and it was just a second ball. Felt him at the edge of the box. He caught it on the half volley. Nice nice strike into the bottom corner, probably one of the goals of the weekend, to be fair. But Drogheda after that really came into the game and got their equaliser through Mark Doyle and really pushed on, looking to get the winner. I think, of the two teams, Drogheda looked the more likely winners, in the second half, and really pushed on and tried to get that second goal. But look, all in all, you could argue the draw was a fair result, but I think Drogheda just showed a little bit more in terms of going to win the game when it was in the balance in the last 10 minutes.
Yeah, I think generally when teams come up, people do fear for their safety, but it does look like Tim Clancy is building something pretty good down at Drogheda.
Yeah, no, Tim's been excellent. The job that Tim has done has probably gone under the radar a little bit. I remember when he got the job three years ago with Drogheda, with a couple of weeks to go before the start of the season, he had to, I suppose, throw a team together, at a late stage, and he's done a terrific job where he put a team together that was really competitive in the first division, and went on to be competitive again the next year. Just missed out and finally got up last year, and now he's kind of added to that quality that he's built through the 2 or 3 year stint that he's been there, and he's brought in some experienced players like Ronan Murray and Dane Massey, and they've got a really good kind of a group there. You've also got Gary Deegan as well, so you've got some real quality experienced players, and then some really good young players who've had plenty of experience in the first division as well. So it's a good blend with a good young manager.
Yeah, I think he's brought in, like with the likes of Murray and a couple like those, he's brought in a couple of players with something to prove as well, which I think could stand to him if he gets them clicking correctly. And moving on to another former club of yours, St. Patrick's Athletic. Good win for them at the weekend, 1-0 over Bohemians. Slow start for Bohemians, Gary. A lot of people thought they were going to kick on this season.
Yeah, it's been a strange start because they probably should have got something out of the Finn Harps game where they got beat 1-0. They were disappointed not to get any points on the board there. 2-0 up at home to Longford was another game that probably should have went and got all 3 points, but didn't. And now the Pats game, probably wasn't a lot in the game. Pats really looking really good. 1-0 wins, that's a really good sign for the team. Obviously, Coughlin, former Rovers man, scoring for them. With a set play, a header from just inside the 6-yard box, Bohemians will be disappointed with that. I think Bohemians will improve. There's no doubt about that. They've got really good quality there. I know there has been a few bodies that they've lost. And Georgie Kelly looked really good in the Longford game, got his goal. And I think, if they can supply him and he can get a run of games where he starts scoring goals, I think they will be all right, because they do have good quality, in their squad as well.
Obviously, Stevie O'Donnell, a former teammate of yourself, you mustn't be surprised to see St. Pat's kick on this year. He does seem to maybe have added just maybe a little bit of steel that was lacking from them in the last few years. Yeah,
look, Stevie, I'm not a bit surprised. I think Stevie has the makings of being a terrific manager. He knows the game inside out. Very, very good on the game. Tactically very astute. You look at the players that he's brought in. He's kind of grown that. I think people were probably a little bit unsettled that the results didn't come pouring in last year, but it's a work in progress. And Stevie, I think, is building it really nicely there. And the likes of Robbie Benson, another really good midfielder. They've got really good players there, and he brought in John Mountney Griffin from Cork. So he's got a good blend. Obviously brought Coughlin in, hoping that he'll be the man that will get them 15 goals plus in the season. So it's exciting times for St. Pat's. Obviously they would have loved to have a few supporters coming in the gates there as well. But you look at what Stevie and Alan Matches are doing. It all seems to be coming together nicely.
The final game of the weekend that we look at was the Derry Waterford game, Gary, and I know a couple of people, good hardcore Derry City fans, and they are slightly worried with the start of the season. How would you judge how they've started this year?
Yeah, they started poorly. I think I was on a podcast with Liam Coyle, and he kind of flagged it before the start of the season that that Decky was under pressure to get results there at Derry, and he was kind of saying, if they don't get Europe, they're in trouble. And at the minute, they're a long way off kind of European football being in contention for that. So it is worrying. They've got new players. There's another kind of high turnover of players. But you see, Will Patching put the ball in for the goal that they got at the weekend, and Will was at Dundalk last year. He's technically a really good player. So it does take a little bit of time to kind of bed things down the park house there, and they have got some quality there. So it's just about getting that result and then building the momentum from there. It's a little bit early kind of to be writing them off just yet, but it is a worrying start for them.
Obviously, as you said, it is very early in the season. Do you expect the pack to be a little bit closer this year, Gary, in terms of the gap between the Shamrock Rovers and Dundalk to the Sligo Rovers, to the St. Patrick's Athletic? Do you expect it to be a little bit, I don't know whether to get ahead of myself and say title race, but certainly a little bit tighter for a little bit longer in the season?
You would hope so. You look at Shamrock Rovers, and they've got, obviously, when you look at them, they're the outstanding team, if you like, at the minute, in terms of how they're set up and their squad and the continuity that they have there, and obviously they're the league champions. So look, they're the ones that everyone has to keep hold of and stay with. The one problem they would have is they've got so many derbies in the season. Like, they've got to play St. Pat's, they've got to play Bows. Like, these are big games, and then Dundalk is a derby for them as well. So they're the games that they're most likely to drop points in. And when you're champions, everybody wants to beat you, and teams will set up in Tala and they'll make it difficult for them to win the game, and you have got to break teams down. So that's their challenge this year, is to be able to, I suppose, grind out them 1-0s when they look unlikely. But I do think that the likes of Sligo Rovers and St. Pat's at the minute really look like they're capable of staying in that mix. And the longer you can stay there, your season builds. I think the one problem that both them clubs have is probably the size of their squad in comparison to Shamrock Rovers squad or Dundalk squad. And injuries, keeping everyone fit and looking after physios have become massively important, and managers, how they structure training in order to make sure that their players are fit every week is going to be massively important over the whole season, if the teams with the smaller squads are to stay in contention with the teams with the bigger squads.
You spoke earlier on about Richie Towell potentially. Obviously, it's been well rumored coming to Shamrock Rovers. What sort of fresh injection is he going to give them if and when he does come later in the season?
Yeah, well, look, the talk is that that deal is done, and he is expected to come in during the season. Like, Richie is a fantastic player. I don't think, probably it gets forgotten how good a season he had before he went away. The 2015 season, I think he scored 27 goals. It could have been 30. You have to check that one up. But certainly 27 goals from midfield. Like, that is unheard of. That sort of strike rate. And when you've got that in your that sort of capability, you're adding that into what is already a really strong squad, it has to give you a boost. So it'll be very exciting for Shamrock Rovers fans to see Richie coming in there. Hopefully there'll be we'll have people back in the terraces, so the Dundalk fans will be able to give him a bit of stick when he goes up there.
Well, please God. Moving on to next week fixtures, Gary. You on duty at any games this weekend?
I'm going to be going to the Sligo Rovers game in Showgrounds. So I'll see you. I'll see you down
there. We'll start with that one. So Sligo and Shams, or I've been told I have to say Shamrock Rovers to be politically correct anymore. So we'll say Sligo Rovers and Shamrock Rovers.
I will be hoping that this game will be a draw. I think if obviously if Ed and the back four have a really good game and keep Shamrock Rovers at bay, I think that could be frustrating for them. And then the pace that Sligo have between Johnny Kenny and Romeo Parks and George Gibson, I think could cause real problems. So I think there might be a score draw.
Oh, just to cut you, what have you, from what you've seen of young Johnny Kenny so far, Gary, have you been impressed?
Yeah, he's been really exciting. It's great for a local kid to be coming through and playing with his local club, and all the fans in Sligo will obviously be delighted to see that. Obviously he was excellent in pre-season, scored 5 goals, and he's got great pace. He's an excellent finisher, but technically very good on the ball as well. And I really liked, I suppose, the sort of spirit that he showed in the first game against Dundalk, where there was absolutely no fear in him, and he was fit for the battle up against the big men from Dundalk, all 3 centre halves, and he gave the boys their fill of it in that game. And the goals will come from, I'd say, the important thing is he just gets frustrated he will score goals. There's no doubt about that. And probably not to try and heap too much pressure on him down there. Just let him go out and enjoy his football and enjoy the season and see where it takes him.
Yeah, 100%. So we're going to go for draw for Sligo and Shams. Longford and Drogheda.
I think that Drogheda will edge this one.
Good, big call. Ollie Horgan's Finn Harps against Waterford. Harps at home.
I think that'll be a draw.
Okay. Big price on the accumulator if it comes in for you this weekend.
I'm sitting on the fence here.
Dundalk and Bulls.
Dundalk and Bulls, this is the tough one. I think Dundalk will get their win.
Yeah. They need something just to kickstart. I think they're only a performance away from it maybe kicking off.
Yeah, but they've created a lot of chances. They haven't played particularly well. I think, Sligo Rovers probably shaded it in the first game. Could have come away with the win had a goal disallowed. Finn Harps, they were poor. Finn Harps deserved the win. But, they created plenty of chances against Shamrock Rovers. And I think, Pat Hoban is getting goals and they will be, I suppose, gunning for that result. Obviously, Brian Gartland is after getting a knock. So we're hoping that his injury wouldn't be too serious. But I do think they probably have enough, to go and get the win at home.
Okay. And St. Pat's and Derry. Pat's at home an inch.
St. Pat's.
We're going to go with Pat's.
I think so. Look,
hopefully you do better than your old buddy Alan Keane. He's been throwing some shockers at us the last few weeks. He's got the games that were really hard to call. He's getting them bang on. And the more straightforward ones he's screwing up. So I know he's going to be very competitive. He texted me earlier on to see how your fixtures or how your predictions are going to go. And just before
he's putting pressure on me.
It's not the first time he's left you under pressure, guys. Just before we finish up, Gary, you did just mention, I have a note here just about Brian Garland and his injury. I haven't heard any updates since, but we wish him a very, very speedy recovery. He's been an absolutely brilliant service to the League of Ireland, and hopefully it's not too serious.
Yeah, look, I know he's gone for a scan. I was chatting to him today. He went for a scan this morning, so he's waiting the results of that and hopefully have more news on that by tomorrow. Again, the surgeons and that have a look at it. But yeah, look, Brian's been a terrific player for Dundalk and the league, and I did a lot of work in the PFEI with me as well. So look, he's all in all, he's a really great guy, and you hate to see lads picking up a serious injury, and hopefully it's not as bad as we fear.
Perfect. And just before we finish up, Gary, obviously after the last time we spoke to you a couple of weeks after, you announced that you had started a new role. Would you like to tell us just a little bit about it?
Yeah, look, I'm basically going to be scouting players, playing in the league over here, but more likely to be in the underage leagues. I'm working with Gestafoot, which is Portuguese football agency, which is founded by George Mendes, and they represent some of the biggest stars in the world, and the network of connections that they have is huge, and I'm going to be working with them, recommending players for our agency, in order to help them kind of, whether it be go to the UK or go to different academies in Europe. But that's the role that I'll be fulfilling from now on. So I'm looking forward to obviously getting out the games and watching a lot of League of Ireland games, kind of earmarking some of the younger players in the league that we're getting a chance now to play, which is great. I think players will really develop in our league. So the top young players, it'd be good to get game time with senior football. I think that will help their development, and it's great to be playing, I suppose, for your local clubs as well. I think it's more beneficial to be playing, senior League of Ireland football as opposed to academy football in some cases. And but look, it's not a one size fits all. Like some players will develop better in academies and develop later, so it may suit them better to go to academies. But that's basically what I'm going to be spending my time doing.
Well, absolutely no better man to spot a talent, Gary. As always, an absolute gentleman. Thanks for coming on and giving up your time. Hopefully you're our lucky charm this Saturday in the showgrounds. We pick up 3 points against Shamrock Rovers. But thanks very much for joining us, Gary, and hopefully we'll chat to you again soon.
Yeah, I don't mind being wrong about the showgrounds results. If we get the win, they'll be very happy.
Cheers, guys.
I didn't want to put the markers on them by calling the win.
It's just a pity you can't head out of the town after.
Yeah, that's it.
Thanks very much, Gary.
See you later.
Yeah.
All the best.
EJMenswear.com. Shop Calvin Klein, Tommy Hilfiger, Farah. EJMenswear.com. Shop Ralph Lauren, Ted Baker, Gaunt. EJMenswear.com. Shop Lyle and Scott, G-Star, Superdry. Shop top brands. Shop Irish owned. Shop EJMenswear.com.